Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Oxnard Live. I'm your host, Daniel Chavez Jr. Apologies for being MIA for a little bit, but as you all know, family is very important. So I had to spend some time with my family, did a little transition in my work life. And of course, if you already know, education can be time consuming. So working on that degree is also very time consuming. But I'm very excited to once again join all of you this evening for Oxnard Live. And as you all know, Oxnard Live is all live and 100% real. So what better way to restart Oxnard Live than to speak with one of the candidates that are running for the June primary this year. The Ventura County Sheriff candidate is Jim Fryhoff, who is challenging incumbent and essentially his boss, Sheriff Ayub, for the top law enforcement position. We're going to be speaking with him, find out a little bit more about him, find out where his priorities are, what does it mean for the average resident of Ventura County, and what additional information does he want to provide in order to change the organization to better serve Ventura County. So without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming Jim Farhoff to Oxnard Live. Welcome, Jim.
Thank you, Daniel, very much for having me on. I appreciate you. This is a great opportunity you're providing. I'm glad that you're back on live again and letting the voters of Ventura County hear what the message is and why change is so important. So I'm going to start with a little background so people know a little bit about me that may not already be aware. I'm a 31-year veteran with the Ventura Sheriff's Office. I was hired when I was 19 years old. I was a cadet before that down in Pasadena, where I grew up for a year and a half, but moved to Ventura County after being hired at 19, and I've been here ever since. Like all good deputies, I spent the first 3.5 years in the jail, working in custody, and then I went to patrol in Ojai, the Ojai Valley. I worked patrol up there. I was a field training officer. I was a bike patrol officer. I was named Officer of the Year early on in 1996. Later that year in July, I was involved in an officer-involved shooting where my partner was murdered on a domestic violence call. I was awarded the Medal of Valor for that. A couple of years later, I was promoted to senior deputy, and I was sent to the Honor Farm. Now, for those that have been in Ventura County for a long time, remember the Honor Farm was a jail that was in the Ojai Valley. It has since closed down, but I was there for 2 years, worked on the alcohol and drug programs there with the inmates that we had in our custody and getting to know the facilitators for that, as well as doing scheduling and classification, which was the investigative position within the jail. I went out to Camarillo, worked patrol. I work special enforcement. Special enforcement is a plainclothes assignment, so a non-uniformed assignment in an unmarked car, chasing down really quality of life issues, gang members, drug dealers, and focusing on those real quality of life issues in Camarillo. And then I was selected to be a detective. So I was a general assignment detective, which was working on identity theft, domestic violence, forgery, fraud, burglary, and those type of crimes. I became the first countywide expert on identity theft. And this is early 2000 when identity theft was really starting to spike for the first time. And as an expert, I was able to testify in cases throughout the county. So if Oxnard Police Department had made an arrest and they needed an expert to testify on identity theft, they would call me and ask me to testify on that case as well. Then I was promoted to sergeant. I went back into the jail. I worked as a watch commander running our main jail at the pretrial detention facility in Ventura at the Government Center. And then after a year, I was selected to be the classification sergeant, which once again ran the investigative unit inside the jail. Was then selected to be a crime prevention sergeant out in Thousand Oaks, where I really got a chance to start working and building relationships with the community. One of the first programs that I created was on the heels of our active shooters that we were seeing in schools with school shootings. We needed to come up with a program to help our schools stay safe, not just our teachers, but students, staff, knowing that in 80% of all school shootings, somebody knows about the attack before it happens. That's a lot of opportunity to intervene. And so the program was really based on that and really educating the parents, students, and staff of what to do when they're made aware of somebody who makes or poses a threat. So that was a program that I created in 2008, and I've continued to teach throughout the county since then. I also created our first active shooter training. I called it What If, and this was again back in 2008. You may have heard of Run, Hide, Fight now of what to do in the event of an active shooter. So before Run, Hide, Fight, I created What If, and it was along the same vein, getting people to think about their location they're in, where their escape points are, where they could hide at, and if they needed to arm themselves or protect themselves, what did they have at hand to be able to protect themselves to save their lives or the lives of their family. I was then went from there. I became the adjutant for Sheriff Brooks, where I worked directly for Sheriff Brooks for his last 9 months in office. And then Sheriff Dean, when he was elected, I was his adjutant for his first 18 months in office. So helped build PowerPoints, helped him prepare for presentations, manage the vehicle fleet that we had to make sure all the vehicles were in order. Was promoted to captain, went back to Thousand Oaks as the assistant chief of police. I was the assistant chief of police in Thousand Oaks for 5 years. During that time, I also got to develop a couple of programs with the community. The first one was called Stand Proud. We were experiencing a lot of bullying in our middle schools, and one of the counselors had reached out to myself and the chief at the time to do something to come up with a program, and they needed help funding it to eliminate bullying in our middle schools. So we funded the first year, which was $100,000 out of the police foundation, to pay for this program to help kids get to pair up with kids that are not in their normal social group and get assignments together where they realize that these other children have value, or they're funny and they could be friendly with them. Even if they weren't friends with them, they could be friendly with them, with the idea to try and eliminate bullying in our middle schools. The program is still going on today. And so that was in 2012, and the program is still being funded by the school district to this day. The second program was called Safe Passage. And that was really an anti-gang program. It was to get kids when they're really young, before they join a gang, and helping make sure they have an opportunity to be successful in school. One of the things that we realized is not all kids had access to laptops or Wi-Fi. And so we had money donated to the police foundation. We bought Chromebooks for our 2 large communities that had the most prominent gang membership area. We created homework assignment areas for them to do homework in. And we partnered with the Park District, Cal Lutheran University to provide tutors for those students as well, so we could try and eliminate gangs before they take hold. Then I also created the first homeless liaison program in Thousand Oaks. The number one complaint I was receiving as the assistant chief was on homelessness, the rise of the homeless population. And so what I realized was the resources that the county has to offer weren't coming into the city to provide services because of they're number one, spread out, but also they feel scared to go inside these homeless encampments alone. So by creating this position, I took one from a directed enforcement position and recrafted it to be dealing with our nonprofits, the non-governmental organizations, the county resources, and the Veterans Affairs Administration to bring services to those experiencing homelessness, so we could not only help get them back on their feet, connect them with services, reconnect them with family, and or hold them accountable also. So then I went to Ojai, where I was assigned as the chief of police in Ojai for 3 years. In Ojai, I don't have extra personnel. It's a very small station. And so I had officers that said, in addition to your normal duties, you're going to be a vulnerable population officer also. Get to know all the resources we have here in Ojai, connect with the county resources that the Thousand Oaks person has done, and let's do the same thing here. Deliver the service, hold them accountable, and try and keep our community free from unnecessary homelessness and connect people with services. Then I was promoted to commander, reassigned to Thousand Oaks, where I got the opportunity to be chief of police. For a year and a half, I was there during the pandemic and also the social unrest that we saw as a result of the George Floyd incident. During the pandemic, the emphasis was really on keeping our community and our officers safe and healthy, extra patrolling our businesses that were closed, and making sure that people saw us so they had some calm knowing that we were out there. And then for the social unrest, it was reaching out to the different event organizers ahead of time to make sure that they understood what the ground rules were, that peaceful protests are welcome, that we understand why they were protesting, but the moment we start to see anything that looks like a riot, fires, looting, or whatever, that we will then call on the officers to then address that issue. And we had very successful, peaceful protests in Thousand Oaks while I was there. And then last June, I was transferred to detention services. I currently oversee all of detention services as the operations commander for Ventura County. So I oversee the Todd Road Jail, the main jail, court services, transportation, and then the East Valley Jail and the East Valley Courthouse as well. So that's my career real quickly, a 31-year snapshot real quick. I've also got my master's degree from the University of Oklahoma, so I know what it was like to go back to school while working full-time as well and raising a family. I graduated in 2015 with a master's in administrative leadership. And then I'm the graduate of the FBI National Academy, which is a 10-week program in Quantico, Virginia. Once again, got my wife's permission to leave for 2.5 months, and I lived in Quantico with 225 other officers from 23 countries around the world. in nearly all 50 states. So we could all share information, not just in the class, but continually to do what we can to keep our communities as safe as possible.
Wow. Definitely 9 minutes, 8 minutes, a snapshot of a 30 plus year career. Lots of good projects coming out of that career. And, also some low points, the condolences to you for losing a partner in the line of duty and to that family. I'm sure it's very hard especially when your partner, you guys ride in a unit together, and that's a bond that's very strong.
And, he left behind a wife, his widow, and then his daughter, who was 3 at the time. His daughter Gabby and I have become very close. She actually moved in with my wife and I and our 2 daughters for a couple of years when she really needed to have some additional influence. And her mom and I had talked, and she goes, "Yeah, I think she could benefit from having a father figure more prominently involved." And so I said, "If you're okay with it, she can move in with us." And so she goes, "Absolutely." So she lived with us for a couple of years. She's now married, has 2 children of her own. Her first son, she named after her dad, Daddy Peter. And then the second one she named after me, Mateo James. My name's James Matthew Fryhoff, so she named her second son Mateo James. So obviously we have a very close bond that we've maintained since that horrible day.
So I want to talk about the priorities, and you kind of touched a little bit about your career, and I understand that your priorities really line up into many of the successes that you had throughout your career. So let's talk about the top 3 priorities, and how are they going to, lack of a better words, how are they going to enact change in the county, and how is it ultimately going to affect the average resident?
Great questions. So the first one is keeping crime low and keeping Ventura County one of the safest counties in the nation. And we're going to do that by working closely with our partner allied agencies and our community to keep us safe. It's about proactive policing, reactive policing, and making sure we're there to address the challenges that we're facing in the moment. Right now, we see a lot of Chilean burgs, or as we call them, the South American transnational gangs that are doing a lot of residential burglaries, vehicle burglaries and such, organized retail theft, and then obviously a huge fentanyl issue that we're seeing with a lot of overdoses throughout the county. And had we not had Narcan or naloxone issued to our officers and also on our ambulances, we would have lost a lot more people in this county due to drug overdoses, because there's fentanyl laced in pressed pills. One pill can kill. And so it's really important for people to know that fentanyl it's not like a regular medication where you know how much dose you're getting. You have no idea how strong the dose is. And so really 1 dose can kill somebody. So it's really important for people to get that message as well. And that we have to work together to hold those accountable that are dealing drugs, offer help to those who are addicted to drugs, and work with the families to make sure they're getting the support. And that we're also, once again, holding people accountable so that they don't commit other offenses and victimize other people in our community. So keeping crime low is the number 1 priority. And then you have the other things of homelessness, right? We see that homelessness is on the rise. California is home to 50% of the entire nation's homeless population. That's a lot of homeless people in California. And so while I was in Thousand Oaks and created that homeless liaison program, it gave us an opportunity to try and stop the flow of adding people to our homeless ranks. 1 year we had 160 homeless. The following year we had 160 homeless, but 60% of them were different, meaning we connected people with services, got them reconnected with family, but we've added people into that realm of homelessness. But had we not taken those proactive measures, we would have potentially 300 homeless people in Thousand Oaks right now. So being able to have those services to offer, and now taking it to that next step and working with all the other agencies to make sure we're not just pushing the problem between each other's jurisdictions, that we're working together to hold people accountable, offer services so that people fall into what our communities are expecting. The reality is there's no panacea for homelessness. You show me 100 people that are homeless, I'm going to show you 100 ways they became homeless and 100 ways to get them out of homelessness. But that doesn't mean we ignore it. We have to address it. And that's through offering services and yet holding them accountable so that the rest of a society is not also victimized by those who are committing crimes and are also homeless. Community outreach is huge. And that is going to help pay huge dividends in keeping our community safe, limiting the drugs that are coming in, and then getting people to be willing to speak to us when they see something. If we don't have a relationship with our community, they're not going to want to provide the information, or they may not feel comfortable providing the information to us if we don't have a very good relationship with our community. So it's really important that we have that. And then last but not least is the morale of the organization. If our officers do not feel supported from our executives and our administration, we are not going to get the best out of them to keep us all safe. We hire really talented people, and they are out there working hard every day to serve and protect all of us, and they need our support. I know Ventura County is a very pro law enforcement county. I hear it all the time. People are very, very supportive of us and want us to continue to do the work we're doing and keeping Ventura County one of the safest counties in the nation. But we need additional help. It's not just the community, it's internally. We have to be able to support our officers so they can do the job, the tough job that we have. I mean, there's no harder time to be in law enforcement than right now. And these officers need our support 100%, which is why I've been endorsed by the Deputy Sheriff's Association, by the Corrections Officers Association, and the Service Employees International Union. Those are the three associations that represent the employees from the Ventura County Sheriff's Office. Those three associations endorsed me and not the incumbent because they are craving change. And because I'm not a stranger, they've seen me for 31 years. They know what I bring to the table. They know the energy and enthusiasm and the passion for the job that I bring to keep our community safe. Both while I was in Thousand Oaks and in Ojai, they were the safest cities that they'd ever been under my leadership, because the officers are excited to work for me. They're excited to engage with their community and go after the people who are causing harm in our areas.
Those are definitely great priorities in order to have. An article came out in regards to the fentanyl impacting Ventura County, which, many of us, we're on Facebook. We see videos that are coming around, and there was one video that I did see, and I believe the county's Peace Officers Association for Ventura County, I might get that name wrong. They had shared a video in regards to two sheriff deputies, not from here, somewhere else, that came in contact with just the powder of the fentanyl. And that even just breathing the smallest amount of it had a tremendous effect and could have killed somebody, unless the officers didn't have the Narcan, like you mentioned, to be able to reverse the effects of it. So I understand the harmful effects, and I also understand, and maybe you can correct me if I'm wrong, that fentanyl is also laced with other toxins that makes it even more dangerous, and that's why it's such a very serious drug to deal with.
That's correct. It's a manufactured drug that's not made in any type of a quality control environment. It is a synthetic opiate that is way stronger than heroin, and it is laced with other things because, of course, as they cut their product with other items, they can sell it and make more money. And they don't care about their users at all. They are just trying to make money in this process, and it creates a huge amount of harm. We also, that video that you're talking about was actually a San Diego agency is the one that released that video. But just recently, we had a couple officers who served a search warrant, and I think we did a press release on it also, where they went into a house, were exposed to fentanyl, and one had a really negative reaction, and they had to use doses of naloxone to save that officer's life. Fortunately, we have that tool at hand to be able to rescue our officers, because this is a brand new challenge in the last couple of years that we didn't have 31 years ago when I started. This was not the challenge for us. So we have to always be prepared to pivot in law enforcement to make sure our priorities align up with what the newest, most significant challenge that we're facing is. And right now, fentanyl, South American transnational gangs, organized retail theft, the lawlessness that we see with people having no fear of prosecution and no fear of arrest needs to come to a stop.
Absolutely. You mentioned homelessness and how in Thousand Oaks, 60%, the following year, from one year to the other, changed, that it was a whole new group of people. Now, LA Metro, which is the transit operator for LA County and reaches out into different counties, operates a bus line into Thousand Oaks. They offer service transit service that oftentimes, if you have no money, you can ride. So homeless are very highly using the bus service. Do you believe that a lot of those homeless individuals were coming from LA County, and now they are they ultimately become the responsibility of Ventura County to get them the services, get them the help?
There's no doubt that we have some that are not from Ventura County, but still the lion's share of those that are homeless in Ventura County are from Ventura County. There are some that felt unsafe in LA. I talked to one that was from Santa Monica, and they felt unsafe. This is obviously during the riots and the protests, and they left and they came to Thousand Oaks, and they looking for services. And so really all of the cities need to make sure they're doing their part to provide services so that one entity doesn't end up being the provider of all. We want to be able to take care of the residents that we have that have fallen on hard times, get them reconnected with services, get them back on their feet. There are some that are not looking for the help either. So there's a balance in there, but the key is we need to say what we're willing to accept as a society and what enforcement looks like. And obviously the Ninth Circuit came out what's called the Boise decision, which really limited law enforcement's ability to criminalize homelessness. But there are, laws in the books that we still enforce: drinking in public, using drugs in public, illegal fires, things that are causing harm to our community that we can still enforce to make sure we're doing everything we can to have their rights protected, but also protect the rights of all the other residents in our community.
Absolutely. You mentioned the internal component of the organization and how you have received 3 endorsements from the 3 different sector labor groups within the organization. And those are just some, because you've also received endorsements from other labor groups, one notably South Coast Carpenters Union, Local 805, and I believe it was the Central Coast Labor Council. So you're racking all these endorsements up from different labor groups. What does that say to the public that the internal organization, labor groups, are calling out for new leadership? What does that say? And how do you fit into that role to be that new leader?
What it's saying is exactly what my career has been built on, is community policing. They are craving to have an engagement with law enforcement. They didn't just endorse me because they're a union group. They endorsed me because they are residents of Ventura County, and that's what I spoke to. They want to feel safe and secure. They want their children to grow up in a safe community, and they want to know that law enforcement is going to be there to support them. We need to have a relationship with our community. And as you may have seen in the debate, the sheriff believes that that if they don't know the sheriff's name, that's an acceptable way to be sheriff. And I have the complete opposite belief that people need to know who the sheriff is, and that it's our job to connect with our community to keep us all safe. The reality is we have a duty and we're an obligation to protect our community, as we are public servants. And as the sheriff, you are the elected public servant, and our job is to connect with these families to make sure that we all are staying safe. And that's the difference. I strongly believe in having us be a force multiplier to help each other, and my opponent does not. When you think about Ventura County and just sheer numbers, there's almost 900,000 people that live in Ventura County. We have 1,200 people in jail. That means there's about 890,000 and change that are not in jail, that are raising their families, that are working hard, going to school, taking their kids to sports, that we can work with and support and get information from to help keep us all safe, and then spend our time focusing on where the real challenges that we're facing are, which are a lot of theft crews that are coming from outside of Ventura County to do harm to our community. Like I've said numerous times, the South American transnational gangs who come here on travel visas with a specific intent to commit theft and then flee the country again after they've broken into houses and cars. This is where we need to focus our effort at. We're very fortunate that Ventura County in general has very low violent crime. We're not without violent crime, but it's very low violent crime. So we need to make sure we're strategic in our deployment of our resources, because we have a finite number of resources to go after the people who are really causing harm in our community. And that's where we need to focus our energy and attention. Our prolific offenders that are constantly committing new offenses, and working with the DA to make sure they're filing those charges to get them off the street, so that we don't continue to be victimized by these same people. And then also focusing on these outside groups that are coming in to do harm into our community.
Absolutely. And, as we all know, that this is Sheriff Ayoub's re-election year. He's seeking a second term. His first election, he was unopposed. It was open seat. He was the only one running, and there was no resistance. So people had no other choice but to essentially vote for him. This election year, we're seeing now a challenger challenging him. And as you mentioned, he's very, and then this is not an attack on Sheriff Ayub or to treat this show as that, but to hear some of the comments that were made at the candidate forum of making it seem that the sheriff's department is okay, that there's no problems internally, and that residents not knowing the sheriff's name is a good thing. I think very much like you, it's the opposite. I think that's a problem, especially when you contrast it with Sheriff Dean, who everybody knew his name. You didn't necessarily know the person, but you knew his name. He was at all these events. And again, we had a pandemic, things changed, but at the same time, the pandemic also affected other sheriff's departments, and they were still doing video messages or still trying their best to get out to the public. As we're coming in essentially what people are believing the end of the pandemic, that we're getting back to a life of normalcy or a new normal, what steps are you going to take in order to have people know your name, to have you be out there making the change that all of these labor groups are, that all of these community residents that are supporting your campaign are calling out for?
Well, one of the things is, yes, I do have the advantage of being where things are open up again, where I can get out there. But there was this wonderful thing called Zoom that was created that we all were able to start adapting to and using right after the pandemic started. I used it when I was in Thousand Oaks for all of our team meetings that we had with the city manager and all the other department heads. And we would meet multiple times a week. Prior to the pandemic, we met once a week, and then we went about doing what we do. But because the pandemic was such a game changer in how we do things, we were meeting 2 or 3 times a week to make sure the priorities of the city were being met, that we were being, good financial stewards, that we were taking care of the issues that the city was facing, to providing the support for the residents like we're supposed to. And then also, as the chief of police, I didn't stop meeting with students as a result of a pandemic. I reached out to our youth commission, our student district advisory committee, the youth and government group, and the YMCA, and I did Zooms with them also so that I could let them know where law enforcement fits into their life. This was on the heels of obviously the George Floyd incident, where they were really upset at what they saw, and they want to know, hey, what do we expect from our police department here? Why are you different? And so I did a lot of that education of working with these kids so they had an understanding of what law enforcement's role is. We're not the enemy. We're here to keep you safe. And there's no doubt that in a situation where there's a suspect and a victim, that maybe the suspect goes to jail and they may not be that happy about it, but we're there to serve the victim as well, right? And so having people have an understanding of where law enforcement fits in. And so for me as the sheriff, I'll be meeting with not just the city councils of the cities that contract with the sheriff, but all the city councils in the county. There are 10 cities in this county, and the sheriff is the elected official of the entire county. I mean, no matter where you live in this county, if you live in Ventura County, you get a vote for the sheriff, because the sheriff is the sheriff for all of Ventura County, not just the contract cities that contract for police services. So working with these other city councils, working with these other law enforcement agencies to make sure that we're doing everything to be with our community, provide those services, and also help maybe recruit people who want to come work for law enforcement. This is a challenging time to get people to come work in law enforcement, but the better communication we have with them, the better connection we have with them, the more likely they're going to want to be part of our team to keep us all safe and enjoying that and feel good about what the message they're getting and what they're doing to give back to their community. And that's where we have to be. And like you said, Sheriff Dean was excellent at getting out in front of people. He was very good about being seen and communicating with people. And I think the reason that Ayub didn't face any challenges in his first election was because Dean said, this is the guy that I want to endorse. And Dean was so well respected by all of us that nobody challenged it. We said, okay, that's who your choice is. And there wasn't any reason for anybody internally to challenge. But now we've seen that we are starting to go down a path where our officers are not being supported, and that we're not connecting with the community in a meaningful way, in a way that I want to see doing. And after 31 years of connecting with my community and being a member of this organization and doing whatever I can to keep our community safe, I didn't want to leave it out there on the table that I didn't do everything I could to keep Ventura County the safest county in the nation.
Absolutely. Now, not to pretend that I'm reading the tea leaves or the writing on the wall, because I'm not. This is technically the first time I'm actually having a conversation with you. I've never had a conversation with Sheriff Ayub. So both of you are essentially two new people that I, as you mentioned, one of over 800,000 residents, voting residents, will have the opportunity to vote on in the June primary. But what happens after this year? If it doesn't go your way, or if it does go your way, what happens? What happens to your career? What happens to your family? If you win, if you don't win, have you thought about things like that?
I only think about winning. So, and when I win, then there will be some substantial changes that we will be able to impact immediately, right? Technically, I wouldn't take office until January of 2023. So depending on what the sheriff's plan is when he loses, of when, if he's going to leave early or if he's going to stay till January, will determine how soon those changes can be implemented, including have each of my patrol stations. So we have 6 patrol stations. We'll have a community advisory group, not an oversight committee, but an advisory group. Stay-at-home moms and dads, employees, students. What are they seeing in their community that they want to have law enforcement help address, and make sure that they have a seat at the table to discuss the issues that we're seeing. Having each of our patrol stations have their own social media platform so they can communicate, because there's no doubt what's happening in Ojai doesn't necessarily impact Thousand Oaks and vice versa. And the things that are regional can be certainly done on the main sheriff's platform, but each of our cities need to be responsive to the communities that they're serving. And so my focus is strictly on what we're going to do to elevate our ability to work with our communities and these outside law enforcement agencies. I mean, that's why I'm endorsed by SEME, Oxnard, Hueneme, and Santa Paula Police Officers Associations have endorsed, because I have a long tradition of working together with other agencies to develop programs and keep our communities safe. And so that's what I'm going to be focusing on.
Now, I just want to clarify for those that are watching. Yes, he only named a few law enforcement agencies, and that's because all the other cities, with the exception of the city of Ventura, are contracted by the sheriff to provide law enforcement. And those deputies did endorse, the Deputy Association did endorse him. So I just want to clarify in case people say, well, that's only 4. That's not every law enforcement agency, but we do have many of our cities in Ventura County that are contracted with the Ventura County Sheriffs to offer those services. But I like your response. I'm sorry. And to that point, you're right. Of the 10 cities that we have, 5 of them are represented by the sheriff's office, and 5 have their own police agencies. 9 out of the 10 endorse me, and 1 is staying out of it. So to your point, yes. I just want to say that it's a great way to look at it, saying I plan on winning. I will win, and this is how I'm going to accomplish that. So again, it didn't mean to make it sound like you're going to lose or anything, because again, both of you guys are coming to me as new, and I'm supposed to make an educated decision in the June primary. But it's just those things to think about of what happens afterwards. But it sounds like you already have a plan of action, that you're ready to hit the ground running, work with the command staff, and work with the community in order to ultimately shape Ventura County in a way that benefits all of us. Is that what I'm hearing?
100%. You got it right on the head. That's exactly it.
Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, this is Jim Fryhoff, candidate for Ventura County Sheriff. Jim, any final words, any additional information you want to provide as we begin to wrap up this evening?
Yes, thank you very much. So for those that would like to learn more about me, you can go to my website. It's Fryhoff, 4 sheriff.com. So FRYHOFF, 4 sheriff, SHERIFF.com. And you can learn more about me, my career, the endorsements that I have that are on the page. If you are inclined to donate, campaigns are very expensive, as you may know. So if anybody's wanting to donate to help facilitate this election to help me win, there's a donate tab on there also. We'll be walking precincts in all the cities. We've walked all of Hueneme, all of Santa Paula, all of Moore Park already. This weekend, we're walking in Ojai, and then we'll be coming to Oxnard here very soon to walk Oxnard. So there's an opportunity where you can sign up to get a newsletter that I send out every Sunday. So if you go onto the website and you want to learn more, say, I want to receive the newsletter, you give me your email address, I'll add you. And every Sunday night, I send out an email letting people know what we did for the past week, what events do we have coming up, and if there's an opportunity to get more involved, that's included in the newsletter as well.
Sounds great. Ladies and gentlemen, again, this is Jim Fryhoff. You can visit his website at Farhoff, sheriff.com. Learn more about his career, his priorities, and ways that you can contribute to the campaign, whether it's a monetary donation or even some of your time. Jim, I appreciate the opportunity to be able to have this conversation with you, and hopefully one day we'll be able to meet in person. And best of luck for you in this election. It's elections aren't easy, and they take a lot of time and effort. And it's not only on the candidate, but it also affects the family. So please be sure to give that support to your family also. And I'm sure they're supporting you during this entire process as well.
Yes, thank you very much. And they are very supportive. And obviously they were the first ones that I had to convince that we were going to do this. And they're all in. So we're ready, and they're very, very supportive, and we're looking forward to this.
Sounds great. Ladies and gentlemen, yes.
Mail-in ballots come May 9th. Everybody gets a mail-in ballot this year. The election itself is June 7th, but you can fill out your mail-in ballot prior to that. So Fryhoff for Sheriff. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is Oxnard Live. We're speaking with Jim Fryhoff, a candidate for the Ventura County Sheriff's Department that represents over 800,000 residents throughout the beautiful county of Ventura. So be sure to check out your June primary ballot books that will be coming out sometime in May, along with your mail-in ballots. This is Oxnard Live, all live and 100% real. Be sure to visit our website at oxnardlive.net, social medias at Oxnard Live, and stay connected. We are back and better than ever, and we have way more candidates to speak with. Thank you, and have a great evening, everyone.